So before I started working on the Advance grant, I had a whole history of studying labor market inequality. I primarily focused on looking at welfare reform and specifically what was happening in poor rural states and what happened to those citizens once welfare reform had been changed, which is what happened. But my whole history as a sociologist has been studying inequality due sex, race, ethnicity, place, socioeconomic status, disability, it goes on, all the inequalities. And so this piece is new to my research by looking at labor market inequality in academia, which is what Advance is about. It's about looking at the fact that women are underrepresented in certain disciplines in the academy, and that when they get in, that they're not moving through as quickly and fully all the way up until leadership positions. Our primary approach to change has the primary initiative in terms of our change is looking at department level work. And specifically, why we focused on departments for a lot of our initiatives is that is where faculty spend the majority of their life. And so if you really want to change the place in which women and underrepresented faculty are embedded, you spend a lot of your resources and time looking at what's happening in departments. Now, that department level work also has to be embedded in a variety of other initiatives that affect other aspects of the institution. And they have to reinforce the messages and the change that you're engaging in at the department level. But we spent a lot of time working on essentially the way faculty engage in faculty meetings. So it was about faculty governance. It's about how faculty make decisions when they get together. And what happens just as a natural part of growth is that when departments get over a particular size, 7 or 8 people, that trying to ensure that every single person has a voice in every conversation that you have where you have to have a vote or a faculty decision on it becomes incredibly cumbersome and difficult and time-consuming. And so what happens is that some people choose not to speak, or some people dominate, or leaders sort of move on with the decision, and what you don't do is bring everybody to the table and have them have a say in a decision that could affect the quality of their life in that department for the length of time that they stay at that institution. So for some people, it could be for their whole career. And so what we did is intentionally design a process that we wanted to introduce in the departments that promoted inclusive decision-making. We designed a process, and then we actually modeled that process to help them produce a strategic plan. And so what we did is we introduced a way to, we showed them how to ensure that every single person was involved in that process, but that it didn't hold up the decision-making, that it was actually a fairly efficient way of drawing people in to conversations and getting their feedback and then feeding that into the full decision of the faculty. And we did that over a course of 8 hours with departments. And so what we believed is that if you could get faculty at this most basic level of their day-to-day lives to change the way that they engaged with each other, so that people who were normally on the margins were pulled into those decisions, that those people on the margins would feel better and would feel more included. And then once those faculty got to know those faculty who were more marginalized, that would sort of integrate and reestablish the group where people felt more included. And that's exactly what we found with our research, is that once we had done the facilitation, there were significant shifts in the group dynamics. So our focus was on the group dynamics of faculty and their faculty meetings. We trained faculty from the institution to serve as facilitators, who then went into departments that were not their own to facilitate a process. We called that process the dialogical change process, because we believe that when faculty are equally engaged in communicating with each other, that changes the way and how they perceive each other. It builds trust, it builds consensus, and it moves a group forward. And when a group moves forward, they feel more confident as a group, and then that reinforces the positive experience of engaging in that way. And so what we're calling the dialogical change process is this facilitation that promotes full engagement. We decided that we thought it was important for our own faculty to work with other units on campus. And it's not that it was less expensive or whatever, so we thought it was important for people who care about the institution, who care about other faculty, to go into those departments and work with those faculty, and that the faculty would recognize that we are faculty from that campus. We know the history of the institution. They don't have to explain to us Senate Bill 547. They don't have to explain to us what's happening in terms of declining resources or salary. We know all that stuff, and we know the overall processes. And we're also academics. And when you hire outside consultants, and that's not to say that those aren't useful for certain circumstances, but we thought, given that we were faculty on that campus who had engaged in faculty meetings and faculty senate on that campus, that actually gave us inside information that could help us be more effective in terms of working with them. And they also, there's resistance at first. They also trusted us more, that we cared, that we were really invested, because we were not going to leave the campus after we worked with them. We were going to stay on that campus and we were going to stay available to them. We still believe that the primary place for change is in the day-to-day activities of people and what happens in the department. So I would strongly recommend that anybody considering engaging in organizational change, either with or without an advance grant, you can do this without advance grants, that they must have a large piece of their change efforts dedicated to department level engagement. Do they have to do exactly what we did? No, but there has to be a piece that primarily focuses on departmental engagement. If you're going to have faculty do similar to what we did, where they serve as facilitators, you have to provide training for those faculty, and you have to provide long-term support for those faculty while they're engaging in the work. The first time they go into a department and start working with the department, the first contact might not go as well as they planned. And what we do is when facilitators finish, they come back to the Advance Center and we talk about what happened. And then we contact either the people that trained us or other outside facilitators to help us think about modifying the process. And you have to be adaptable and flexible and modify the process after feedback from the faculty. So the way we first did a facilitation is not exactly the same as by the time we finished working with 16 departments. We used the feedback from the faculty to modify our process along the way. You want to make sure that there is time for them to do this work. They go to a large number of meetings with the faculty. They need to have a flexible schedule so that they can go to any time that the faculty are available. So faculty don't have a standard faculty meeting on our campus. Some faculty meet every Monday for an hour, and some meet once a month on a Friday afternoon. And so our facilitators had to be really flexible so that they could go when the department faculty were available. You need to find some way to compensate them for the work that they're doing. They should not be asked to do this on overload. They should not be asked to do it for free. It is the work of the institution. It's the primary way in which the institution would change, and it should be recognized, validated, compensated. When people ask me about WVU Advance, what are the primary initiatives, I always start with talking about the departmental engagements. It's one of the things I think that we're known for across the Advance community, because the Advance team actually went into departments and worked directly with departments. And there are other institutions that do this, but not every single institution does it. Sometimes people hire outside consultants to come in and work with departments, but we work continuously across 16 departments. And I think because that we were part of the research team and part of the process of change, it gave us so much more information about what was happening on our campus. And it allowed us to adjust all of our initiatives, not just the department level work, but when we found out that faculty needed something, we then worked to try to make sure that faculty in that department got it as well as across the campus.